Well, I just finished my lunch and it's time for coffee. And I have yet another way of making coffee I want to share with you today. This is the Leverpresso V4, a hand-powered espresso maker from the South Korean company Hugh. If you're interested in hearing my thoughts on this device, keep watching. Just before we get started, I do want to thank the company Hugh, H-U-G-H, for sending out their Leverpresso V4 so that I could share it with you. So I have been using this at home for the last 3 months, primarily out in the woods just a couple of times, just to be sure that it's something I could use out here. And of course, I'm going to be doing that today. So I have enough experience now that I can give you my thoughts on it in use. What I thought I would do is focus in on the device itself for a moment, give you a few specifications, show you the things that it came with, what all came with the device. Then we'll set it up and make some coffee. All right, to begin with, what came with the Leverpresso V4? Obviously a manual, pictorially done, all the information you need to get started. However, I will tell you, it does take some practice in order to get the best shot of espresso out of this device. We'll talk more about that as I demonstrated. So here is the unit in its entirety. One thing it did not come with that I had to fashion from something else at home was a carry sack. No carry sack for this at all. So I think that's a bit of a miss. It'd be nice to have a carry sack if it's going to be a travel item or something else you might take out in the woods. So let's start with what all's included. So under the cap, and the cap is really just intended to hold everything in place, are these two things. Little silicone caps, if you will, that cover over the chamber where the water is held. Those are intended for keeping the water hot, not so much spilling water, but keeping the water hot as you press the levers down, as I'll demonstrate in a few moments time. Reality is I took them off and I've left them off. I tried using them just once, and to me they were more of a nuisance than they were of a benefit for keeping things hot. We'll talk about importance of keeping things hot in a few moments time. Now at the bottom is a couple of things. Right here is the cup itself that you make your coffee into. Inside of the cup are two things. One is this little dosing thing. It's not a dosing funnel so much, but it does allow you to put your coffee in there and then pour it into the portafilter. Just make it a little easier, but more importantly, it acts as a tamper. So that's what you tamp your coffee down in the portafilter, and again, I'll demonstrate. And then the other thing is this little device which just splits the stream of espresso into two in case you wanted to make a split of two little tiny espressos out of one shot. I used it once. That's all I'll say about that. So that goes aside. Now, in taking the device apart, what you're going to see, I'll show you how the levers operate. You can see at the top they're gear driven. And what that's doing, it's raising the piston of that pushes the water down through the coffee. So essentially that's what's going to happen when we get the water inside and the coffee inside, is we're going to push the piston down and create the pressure. But here is where the portafilter sits and screws on. Still just a little damp after I cleaned it from the last use. There is the basket for your coffee. That's going to sit inside of this ring right here, and that's going to attach to the bottom. You can see the dispersion filter up here, if you will, the screen for dispersing the water over top of the coffee. And yeah, then you would basically, once your coffee's all loaded in, this does lock on, you could then press your coffee down into the little cup that comes with it. Now, Hugh did send me an option that you may be interested in if you're going to use that at home, and that is this base. Now, normally I would not bring this out into the wood. I just brought it out for demonstration because it is a cast metal and it is a bit heavy. But the idea is if you're using this at home, take the cup off of the bottom, then this will sit on like that. Okay, so it sits on like that. Now you've got a base that you can put it on your counter, put your cup, either the one that came with or any other cup for that matter, and then operate it. We're not going to be using this today. I do use it at home. It just makes things a little bit more stable, especially when it comes to pouring water into the device, which you'll see me do in a few moments' time. But we're going to make the coffee using the base. It does have a little bit of a rubber silicone pad on the bottom just to keep it from sliding around. So okay, that's the whole device. Now, as far as specifications for this device goes, where did I put the cap? Just so I can give you everything. Okay, so specifications for this device: height 7.5 inches, 190 millimeters. Diameter, 3.15. I think they're including the width of the two levers on the side because obviously the chamber itself is not 3.15 inches, 80 millimeters. Weight, yes, there is a bit of weight for this device. 1 pound, 4 ounces, or 572 grams. And I know right away for some people, they're going to say, way too heavy. No argument here. It is heavy. We'll talk more about whether or not this is a good device for the woods when I get to my experiences using it. All right, that's everything that I want to give you now. Let's get it set up and make myself a shot of espresso. All right, let's make some coffee. Okay, so I've taken the unit apart and I'm going to put the coffee in the portafilter, get that set up and ready to go. So the coffee I'm using today, surprise, Rampage coffee. I ground it fresh this morning. I know normally you would grind it just before making your coffee, but just something else to carry out here in the woods today. So I ground it actually very, very fine. And I know that if I put 3 of these scoops in, because I did pre-weigh it, level scoops, I'll have 15 grams of coffee in my portafilter. And that's pretty much what I am looking for. 15, 16 grams, whatever, somewhere around there. Give it a bit of a tap to level it off a little bit. That's the dosing funnel. It's not a funnel, but I should say dosing scoop and tamper. And I'm going to push that down. Not too firm. I'm looking more to level it off than anything else. Okay, that looks pretty good. Put that aside. Now we're going to put that on the bottom of this unit. Quite tightly, not super tight that you can't get it off again, but quite tightly. And we're going to place it on top of the cup. Now, here's where using this out in the woods can get a little bit tricky, and it's going to take some experience for you to get the most out of it. For one thing, pouring the water in this, I have some water heating off to the side, and as soon as it comes to a boil, then I'm going to be putting it down inside of the unit. And this is the trick to getting a good shot of espresso. It took me a little while to understand this because one of the things that you have to learn by experience only is how much pressure to put on those 2 levers. The guide says 20 to 30 seconds of pushing the levers down, which is true. The guide also says fill this up to the maximum capacity, which is water, which is true. But it'll hold more water than you want in your shot of espresso. And that's where I was thrown off a little bit in the making of this. You want about 80 milliliters of water or coffee when you're finished. So that's how much you want to have go through your coffee to create your espresso. You end up putting in about 120 milliliters of water. So some of the water is going to be staying behind at the end of the process, and you'll know that because it'll leak out a little bit. But that's not too much of an issue as long as you're aware of it. But you need that volume of water in order to create the pressure that creates the crema. And that was the biggest challenge I had, was creating enough pressure to get a good crema. Let's see how I do today. Okay, my water is hot. If I was doing this at home, I might pour water in before to preheat the cylinder. But because this is made of a synthetic material, it does a pretty good job of holding the heat all by itself. I don't have a whole lot of water in this. I'm going to turn it sideways so I can see what I'm doing, pouring it in. All right, I'm going to, you lift the levers. Here's where it gets a little tricky. Okay to do it on the counter at home, but if you're out here in the woods, you just want to take your time with this. You lift the lever, the piston is rising, and it comes to a point where it passes a gap, and the water all goes underneath the lever. Now, I'm not going to push this down because then the water will start going through the coffee, but I do want to put in more water. As much water as I can get in here. And that should, if I push it down a little bit, all right, that all went below. I'm going to put a little bit more in. That's all I have is a little bit more. I can't get any more underneath there. All right, I've got a little bit sitting on top, probably a little bit more than the 12 or 120 milliliters. And now it's just a matter of pressing down until you're finished the shot. So about 20 seconds is what I find. Some people will say start and then stop. That way you pre-soak the shot of coffee in the portafilter. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with doing that. What I like to do is the moment I see a couple drops, and there I see a couple drops, is kind of just leave the pressure off for a moment. I can then also lift the levers and get that last bit of water down inside. All right, now we're good to go. And I'm just going to start pushing. Looking pretty good in there. I can feel the pressure. You want some resistance on the levers, and that was one of the things that I had to learn by experience, is I wasn't getting enough pressure or resistance, and therefore not enough pressure and not enough of a crema. Okay, let's pull those levers out a little bit. That actually stops the flow. Now here's the thing, I've got my shot pulled. Let's see if I want to show it to you. You can see the crema in it. It looks really good. But this unit is going to drip a little bit, and I'm just going to put it, how should I say, right there. That's one of the issues about using it in the woods as well, is where do you put it once you've separated from the cup. On the stand at home, that's no problem. Out here, a little bit different. Okay, what I want to do now is just set the camera back up, and we'll give it a taste test and talk about my experiences using this. All right, it took me about 20 seconds or so to reset the camera for position. Still held some of the crema. Hopefully that's showing. Let's give it a taste test. Smells good. There is depth and character to that coffee. You can't get this flavor profile for coffee any other way. You have to use some type of an espresso maker. In fact, I did some comparisons with this, and well, let me tell you the reason I did the comparisons with it, using my other favorite method, which of course is the AeroPress, because this is not a very big coffee, right? Not very big. That's 80 milliliters of coffee. That's actually big for an espresso shot, but it's not a big cup of coffee. I can turn this into a bigger cup of coffee by pouring some hot water in it and then making it into an Americano, but I'm going to enjoy it at full strength. But I did some experiments, and I set up side by side my Leverpresso right next to my AeroPress. I put the same amount of coffee, 15 grams of coffee in each. I put the same amount of water in, and then I ran it through. And because honestly, I wasn't convinced that, this is before I learned the trick to how to create enough pressure inside the Leverpresso. I wasn't convinced that the Leverpresso was creating enough pressure to create a true espresso. You need 9 bars of pressure to create a good espresso. So I ran the two of them through. Oh, there was a huge difference in taste. I was actually very surprised and pleased. Not that the AeroPress didn't make a good shot of coffee, it certainly did, but the added complexity and depth and character and full bodiness you get from an espresso is on a whole other level. And the only way that would have happened using the Leverpresso was, in fact, that it did create the required pressure to extract that extra flavor profile. I'm not sure, a dirt bike going down one of the roads nearby, one of the trails nearby. Okay, so as I mentioned, it is a true espresso maker, but there's a learning curve on it for me. Now, Hugh does sell another model, which is upscale from this one. This is the entry-level model. There's an upscale model that actually has a pressure gauge on it so that you can keep your eye on how much pressure you're creating as you push the levers down. You're not going to have that with this. This has to be done based on your experience. And like I said, I wasn't sure I was getting everything out of this when I first started. In fact, I wasn't, because I hadn't learned the trick. So I did reach out to Hugh and say, what am I doing wrong? And they have a couple of instructional videos that I watched over and over again to make sure that I was doing it exactly right. And when I followed their directions to the T, that made all the difference in getting a good espresso shot. So if you're thinking that this might be something you want to purchase and you try it and you're not happy with the result, don't give up. Go back, look at the videos. It's actually written in the instructions, but I guess I didn't absorb the instructions all that well. And you will end up with a good shot of espresso. Okay, having said that, is this something worth carrying into the woods to make your espresso with? The answer for me is no, it is not. 1, it is too heavy. 2, it is a bit complex in its setup and using the device. It requires a little bit of coordination that is makes it a little bit prone to spills, if you will, right? Even now that the cylinder is just leaking some water, the excess water I mentioned a minute ago. And yeah, it's for those reasons, and the learning curve to get a good shot of espressos. There are other hand-powered espresso makers on the market that are much smaller, much simpler to use, and will also produce a very, very good result. The potential is there for the Leverpresso to produce an even better espresso based on your experience. Maybe that's the one thing it has going for it over the other ones. They're kind of fixed in the way, I mean, you can vary some of the variables like the type of coffee, the amount, and that type of thing, but you're not varying the pressure. You have to use it the way it's designed to use. With this, I can vary the pressure as well as those other variables and maybe tailor it a little bit more to get the shot that I like the taste of the best. Okay, that's in no way a criticism of the Leverpresso because well, here's where it excels. It excels at sitting at home on your counter. Like if you're thinking about purchasing or investing a whole lot of money in an espresso maker for home, then you may want to rethink that and look at one of these devices because the all-in-one do-it-yourself espresso makers, they cost a lot of money if you want to get a good one. For much less money, you can get this hand-powered one, and it's really not any more work than the original, with the exception you have to heat water up in a kettle. That's about the only difference. The others will heat the water up for you. So you may be better off trying one of these out. That's for home. Now, if you're traveling, you want to take it to work, you want to take it car camping, or you want to take it traveling for use in your hotel room, that's where this device excels. It does a really good job of doing that. All you need is your coffee and hot water and you're good to go. And a little bit of experience using it and you can pull some really nice shots of espresso. Do I recommend it for the woods? No. Do I recommend it for all other uses? Without hesitation. I really like this device. It just won't be coming out in the woods with me probably anymore. I have other devices that can make a reasonable shot of espresso that are smaller, lighter, and simpler. Let's put it that way. Okay, that's everything I have to say about the Hugh Leverpresso V4. I'll put all the specification and the links for the Leverpresso as well as the stand in the video description. You want to take another look at them. If you have any comments or questions, then please put those in the comment section. But until next time, get out and explore and take that path less traveled because it will make all the difference. Bye for now.